So, this is all new for me. As far as, I guess, what I was saying earlier. I can't sleep right now, so. It's not just the worry right now, which is actually pretty unusual. So, I find that this helps out. With the eyes, I'm really tired, so I'm just going to be scattered on these. Not the blurriness, but it's how I noticed it. It happens very rarely. But I'm so used to dealing with the fading of my vision because of the physical stuff. The damage from whenever I was a kid. I wasn't even really a full year before my mom died. Man. The year he did it, I was 7, and the year Mom died, I was technically 3 months out from being 8, so still 7. Yeah, that was kind of messed up to sort through and sort out. Growing up, my timeline was all screwed up. I would tell people that I was 5. The last time I saw my dad after I remembered, but then I was like, wait a minute. That I was 5 whenever we moved out here, but I was actually 4. And I was actually 3 whenever what happened to my dad happened. And I was actually 7 whenever my mom died, not 8. So, yeah. But things were so traumatic, it wasn't like I was, like, keeping track, I guess. I mean, in a way that kids try to, but, like, trauma throws you off, dude. Anyway. So I'm not dealing with it as much. Literally, my eyelids are so thin that I get the overexposure to light even in my sleep. It's like if I fall asleep and at any point in time my head is facing the lamp, I wake up like this. And my eyes hurt right now. And it's not because I was reading, because they were hurting before. It's a pain that I recognize, but not something that I recognize that has a cause that I can help, if that makes any sense. So, I guess I want to at least document this somewhere, since my journal is not open for me to do that right now. Because I literally have to wait till next month to be able to do that again. So, yeah. Apparently, every health issue I've ever had that nobody's ever been able to explain can be explained with what we now know about Hashimoto's, which is not great, but better. Also, apparently Hashimoto's is much more common in the US than they ever thought. That's not reassuring. Has anybody ever thought that maybe it's because it's all this crap that shouldn't be going into our bodies? And the fact that we literally live in a country that thinks it's okay to medicate people for emotional problems? This is suppression, not treatment. That causes more problems. It does not solve them. It's literally normal here for them to take kids from their parents and then medicate them to make them easier to deal with. Let that sink in. They literally think that they can medicate out emotions, or at least your reaction to them, enough so that they can claim that it is acceptable enough to, say that they've done so, and then they try to mold you to whatever they want. And then, people get up in arms because they're so shocked that this is happening to the immigrants' kids, and has happened to them, but literally, this is what normally happens to kids in state custody. This is everyday shit for them. now they're getting sued for it, and I'm like, yay, but let's also pay attention to the fact that this happens to citizens, and not just kids who are brought over from another country illegally, or just because asylum. This is not where you want to come for asylum. This country is so totally fucked up, especially in how it handles children. Run away while you still can. Apparently, fluctuations and flare-ups are both things and can happen together, and flare-ups don't particularly have any rhyme or reason, but have triggers. I live with the trigger constantly. So, and it's not even my PTSD, because looking at the things there, I can even isolate how this was a thing before, but like, I learned to live with PTSD. I learned to live with it constantly, so there were certain things that just didn't trigger it, and then there were things that it did. And then it was mostly, though, outside triggers for it. So I've always had a history of intense emotional distress, making my health, whatever health issue I had, like 10 times worse. I never had any sort of problems with, like, my body trying to kill me until my kids, until that happened. And then, there was actually this moment whenever I felt something happen, and then I was like, oh god, I'm going to die. Because, like, I don't know, I just felt something, and I was like, my body is turning against me, blah, blah. It probably sounded like the ramblings of a crazy woman. But I was also right. As crazy as that sounds, I was right. It's a shitty thing to be right about, though. And it was basically just a feeling, but it was a feeling that likely I only really felt because of years of meditation and self-awareness through that, to be deeply aware of yourself. I don't imagine that it is normal unless you have some sort of training in that. But I do. A lot of it is self-taught, I'm not gonna lie on that, but then most of it you sort of have to. I had a little bit of guidance from writings and other people who had done it, but most of it's just self-practice, because everybody's journey is individual, and no one can tell you how to know yourself, but you. So, yeah, basically that's the principle of it. They can tell you the methods, they can tell you how to master those methods, but nobody can tell you how to know you. So most of it is just you doing it. Which is way harder than it sounds. Especially learning how to break through your own personal barriers to do so. Anyway, I felt it, and I was fairly sure that people were going to think that I was nuts if they ever read it. So, anyway, yeah. And then, my body proceeds to try and kill me, and I've actually already been through this, where, there goes me being clumsy. About roughly 6 months after the last time I saw my kids, around there, I think, maybe 6 months, about a year. Nope, 6 months. Around there. I ended up in the hospital. Why, you might ask? Because my body would not stop bleeding. And I basically almost died. They had to do a rapid blood transfusion because that entire 6 months I was bleeding nonstop. So yeah, my body did try to kill me. And for the past years, it has been continuously bleeding, and it has been an uphill battle to simply not die of anemia. and a low blood cell count. And my body never really kept up very well with red blood cell count to begin with. I always had to have a diet high in iron to do that. So, bleeding constantly, yeah, that's a little too much for me. It's only been the last few months that I've managed to independently find a way that sort of helps that. And this is actually only the second month I've had anything even resembling a normal cycle. It is basically a fight for me to not bleed constantly. I never had this problem. I had periods that were maybe a day or two longer than normal, which was considered, I guess, within normal. Women in my family normally have heavy periods to begin with, so it wasn't considered particularly remarkable for me to have an abnormally heavy period, even if it was, like, insanely heavy, because that's not that much heavier than women in my family normally have. But it is too much for anyone to have. We already err on the barely tolerable, barely livable side of that to begin with. We cannot afford to lose more blood than that. And me in particular, my body just doesn't really play well with making enough red blood cells to begin with. So I have to keep up with it because I run low. Even when I'm not bleeding, I will run on the low side of normal. And that is with a diet high in iron. Yeah. First time I tried to give blood years and years ago, I had to... Only my blood type allowed me to do so. And I had very strict instructions because I was technically too low. What's weird is that a few years ago we actually found out that my blood type changed. And I was like, this can happen? Apparently it can. I don't know why. But, yeah. Your blood type can change. I didn't know that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll be up in a little bit. Give me a few minutes. Anyway, only recently did... I guess I only even realized, like, tonight that... Because this doesn't happen often. And it's only been, like, the past few months that I've even... Not even a few months. That I've even had this thing. And it always comes off at some point anyway. It's not like it stays on all night. I usually have to go looking for it. Because it just comes off. But, you know, the time that it's on, it helps. So, dealing with the increased blurriness and realizing that it's not actually part of the same thing, that's kind of scary. And I don't know enough about eye stuff to not be completely out of my depth in reading up on it. I don't even begin to understand what they're talking about. Normally, I can say I understand what's being said. I don't understand shit. I understand the Hashimoto stuff everywhere else, except whenever it gets to 6% of people have blah blah blah. I don't even know if this is the same thing. I literally have no idea what this disorder is that they're talking about. And then they start talking about another disorder where you're like 25% likely, and I don't even have a doctor who even tries to understand this. There's literally no way for me to even bounce this off a doctor who in any way tries to understand this at all. I mean, I would literally be the one taking in a packet of, here's how you understand me. And then I would be also terrified because I went through the mental health system as a kid. Because my grandmother was determined to make me sick. And, like, the state had done basically that to me as well. And they were just so determined that I be sick so that they could give me medicine to excuse the fact that I was going through tremendous grief. And then my grandmother just wanted me to be sick because of tension. So, like, some of the symptoms include that you can have mood swings with it. And I'm like, I don't want them to start assuming that I am just because. I mean, I get PMS, but, like, otherwise, no. I mean, I have emotions. But mood swings, I learned growing up, they tend not to really, a true mood swing doesn't really have it can be completely disconnected from your emotions. I am reacting to these emotions in a vaguely human and healthy manner, even if people around me don't like it. And then there is, oh my god, what the fuck is wrong with me? I don't get what the fuck is wrong with me. I have feelings. And I have feelings. Stop trying to get up on the table. I will spray you. What has gotten into you? This evening, that is the second time you have tried it. So, lucky. You will find yourself lucky now to be soaked this evening. Warning spritz. He dodged it. Message received? Usually that. Generally he behaves after something like that if he's getting like this. So anyway, yeah. Apparently, like, there's a whole aspect of this I don't even begin to understand because it is in the eye doctor stuff. And that is just something I have never researched. I would have to, like, begin at, like, bottom concepts to even be remotely satisfied with any sort of understanding, to even begin to understand this. Or any sort of concept, at least the basic structure of, like, how things work and how things affect them. I don't know anything about this. I have no background in this whatsoever. I don't understand shit. I don't know if it's the same thing. I don't know if it is just that there is swelling in my eyes that causes this. Which actually, thinking about it, could be vaguely possible. I mean, apparently, all this inflammation that I deal with is directly connected to the Hashimoto's, and every doctor I've ever had is just an idiot. Not every doctor. I mean, I also have arthritis. But I mean, like, the not addressing the whole massive inflammation problems issue, and just kind of ignoring it and attributing to, haha, you're fat. Which does not explain anything. Actually, the fact that I can't lose weight is a problem. And that needs to be addressed. And been like, why? Why is this happening? Not, oh, you must be eating donuts. I don't fucking eat donuts. I don't eat Twinkies. I eat sweets very rarely. It doesn't even matter if I drink soda or not. I just don't. It doesn't affect my weight unless I'm just not doing anything, and then I can lose that weight. But I can't get down past a certain point. I can't. And the fluctuations that come, they're like, I have dealt with 20 to 30 pounds just in inflammation. That is how much my weight can vary in a day. Like, I can weigh myself at the beginning of the day, and that is how much it will be changed, or how much it will vary in some way by the end of the day. It can go anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds. Typically, it is closer to 20. So, like, 20 is like the average. 20 average, just in swelling. How am I supposed to express this to a doctor who basically looks at me like I'm a crazy person for this? Why? Because I have PTSD? All which, by the way, is not good for you if you have Hashimoto's. Emotional triggers. Yeah. I deal with grief and wondering if my children are alive or dead. I live with this trigger. This affects it more than PTSD. Anything I can ever connect to PTSD ever has. Anything more than anything ever has. I never dealt with that kind of issue before. And it can be directly connected to Hashimoto's, despite the fact that my doctors are complete and total idiots. Everybody just wants to throw thyroid medicine at it, stuff that regulates the thyroid, which doesn't work for me. Or, something to regulate my female hormones, which doesn't work for me. Because it's all the same fucking issue. I've found some level of, at least I'm not bleeding to death. But that doesn't mean it's regulated. That just means I'm not fucking bleeding to death. You realize how bad it probably has to be for that? Oh, also I'm PMSing right now. So, I also, got really emotional about something that I have legitimate emotional need to, after, getting really nervous and over-explaining to my grandfather about something that I didn't even want him to really know about, ever. Not the thing, but something I never wanted him to know about, and literally, even Gene only knows, because my grandfather knows, and this upset me. It's not that I was keeping it from it, it was just one of those things that you just never want to talk about ever again. It just happens, and you just never want to talk about it. There's never a desire to go, yeah, I totally want to talk about this. It came out because I was basically puking words. Because I was so nervous that my grandfather would misunderstand something and hate me. Because the subject was just one of those subjects. And I had, just said something on a whim, and then I was like, oh crap. And I was trying to fix it, and I was just making it worse, and just digging myself deeper. Because that is what fucking happens. And every once in a while, everybody has something like that, but, no. So I'm not sleeping tonight. Also because I've still got, that nervous energy that I don't want to talk about. And I will never admit to a psychiatrist ever. Because it so rarely happens, and they really just don't need to know, because then they will try and throw psychotropic drugs at it, which doesn't help. And at least I know why, because there's finally an article about it, and finally a medical journal that has an understanding of how this is connected. And yeah, anti-anxiety doesn't work, because it's not anxiety. It can mimic it to a degree. But, it's not anxiety. And the article is talking about not treating the thyroid itself, or, that other stuff, but actually finding and treating the immune system, and finding out why it's acting the way that it is. And trying to, I don't have much of an immune system, so I'm not sure immunodepressors would be a great idea for me. But definitely, if we could, get it to, behave or something, and maybe recognize friend from foe. Because immunodisorders basically come about because your immune system is having trouble recognizing friend from foe. It's having trouble recognizing itself from something it's supposed to be fighting. And, whenever your body is basically forced to act against itself, I don't know, maybe that could be a reason. Years of medications that basically made my body work against itself. You don't think that maybe there could be a connection here? America does this more to its people than any other country, and we have more cases of Hashimoto's than any other country. I wonder if this is connected. I bet you anything the medical community won't even, like, try to see if that's connected. And if they do, it'll be hushed. Because it's not convenient for pharmaceutical companies. You know, the people who benefited off of that sort of shit, like me being forced into medical trials as a kid for things I didn't even fucking have. I had a diagnosis for about as long as they needed me for a trial. Sometimes it was a little bit longer, just, I guess, to make it look good, but yeah. My diagnosis switched more often than some people switch underwear, which is actually really sad because I hope you change underwear every day, but some people do not, and yeah. It changed pretty often, and it was about as long as whoever, sometimes it changed as my doctor did. Because new psychiatrist, new fucking book they were writing. They were writing a book, they wanted everybody to fit that book, which meant that they were going to shoehorn you into it. Didn't matter if that was actually your case or not. They were going to make it fit, come hell or high water. This is the sort of people my grandmother took me to see. Anytime we found anybody halfway ethical, no, because then they started drawing into question the fact that she was so determined that I would be sick. She was so determined, and this is another thing, like, I was actually pretty normal. Like, you picture mood swings and it just seems, oh my god. My grandmother told everybody that I was bipolar. You know why? Because this is one of the most misdiagnosed things, like, ever. And simply having emotions is enough for a lot of these fuckers to diagnose you. The differentiation between mood swing and emotion is not made. PMS and bipolar are two different things. Mostly because PMS basically is you being a little bit more emotional, like tending to act on that emotion a little bit more. Because hormones are there and they are fucking with your shit. But bipolar, I don't even know if it's the same as what I went through. Because what I went through was medications forcing it. And it's like being trapped inside your body. And you can't do anything that you actually feel like doing. But your body has this reaction and it demands. It's indescribable, okay? But you're just very deeper and deeper, and you have this stupid smile plastered on your face, and everybody's okay with that. It doesn't matter how much suffering this causes you. They're okay with this, even as they know. Even when they know. They're okay with this. Horror. Even whenever you're able to tell them that this is going on, that this is completely different, that this is a horror, it's like not even being in control of your own body to an extent. You are chemically being forced to react entirely different than is natural. So yeah, I think that may have something to do with it. I don't really want to say anything else right now, and I'm not even sure I'll have anything to say tomorrow. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I'm pretty sure I have emotionally drained myself on this. And I would like to spend what emotional energy I have left on something less taxing. Chris wants to go to the pool tomorrow. We'll see what happens. So, maybe at the end of the day, I'll still do my "this is what we did today" summary, but it's much easier to type for a reason. Also, nobody has to see, like, my face be all drawn and tired at odd times, and I can just put everything in one spot. It can be as long or as short as I need it to be, and it won't seem weird. Well, nearly as weird as this. So, yeah. But, according to doctors and pharmaceutical companies, I'm sure this has nothing to do with how this happens and why America, so, whenever they actually start testing people, has more cases. A lot more cases. Where it's actually apparently coming out to be somewhat more common than people thought it was in America. Gee, I wonder why. There are some basic concepts, like how my little sister's brain was able to be taught not to have seizures through a certain therapy. Basically, you make the brain focus on something else. You make it focus on burning fat, so it doesn't have anything left over to really have a seizure with. But then you can't eat a bunch of other things. It's a dietary thing. Well, if you feed a kid a bunch of pills and make their body do things that are unnatural to them, or that would even normally be thought, or, completely change things out of whack, for, to do things to them, then wouldn't this reasonably have the possibility of teaching a person's body to fight itself? That is something I think that they should need to look into. Because this is shit. And it wouldn't surprise me even a little bit if that was the case. In fact, I'm pretty sure it probably is. At least part of it. I mean, it's basic concept. But yeah, I understand enough about medical stuff in general that, don't ask me to understand optometrist stuff. I understand, I barely even, get the nearsighted and farsighted stuff. Natural medicine, great. Here's a tea for inflammation, blah, blah, blah. I can understand that stuff. I can make my own anti-inflammatory tea. Great! With basically stuff you normally have in your kitchen. Like ginger, turmeric. But I can even make something that helps with infections. Like with cranberries. But I won't... Most of it isn't meant for kids, so you don't, most of it. It's usually better to give them antibiotics. Unless it's something stupidly minor that you can just drink cranberry juice for. Like a UTI and it works. Then it's just better not to use antibiotics too much, because then you build up an immunity and then it doesn't work whenever you really need it. Yeah. My grandmother had me drinking that crap like water. So, anyway. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me any. I mean, you have somebody's body constantly at war with itself, and you're making it do things that aren't natural to it. Things that it would normally fight. And you're not really measuring, where their levels actually are on anything. You're just saying, oh, this person has feelings. Let me give you a pill for that. You don't think that that's going to have some effect? Besides severe emotional damage from this, or learned helplessness, or any other number of things that we know actually happens as far as, like, fucking with you in the head. Or messing with you emotionally and giving you deep-seated issues. I mean, like, physically. Did you really think that you could force feed a bunch of kids a bunch of pills and that there wouldn't be some sort of health trend here? Because I believe that if they study this, they will find a lot more than Hashimoto's is probably quite a bit more common in those who have been through this sort of thing, where they were in the state's custody and they were medicated out the wazoo, or just medicated out the wazoo for a bunch of stuff that apparently nobody bothers to even try to physically measure. Even though these are all supposed to be things that can be physically measured. Actual chemicals that your brain produces, and you should be able to do a blood test and say this is regulated or not. But they don't, because they're not interested in that. It's all one big circus. We're a bunch of kids who may or may not even need it, and most of which probably don't, end up on a bunch of pills that don't help them, that may or may not suppress actual reactions to things. And this can lead to simply not learning how to deal with those reactions and control them yourself, which is actually an integral part of development. This is impeding a stage of development, and it's harder to learn later. I mean, there's no end of things that I can say about this, and ways that it's bad. It really would not even begin to surprise me if this was part of that. If my body is essentially attacking itself, because that's what it was taught to do. It wouldn't surprise me one fucking bit. Not even a little bit. God, my bangs are being weird right now. Oh, it's probably the stuff I have in them. Yeah, I put more of that stuff in my hair, trying to stop it from breaking and falling out. Because, you know, it's been doing that for the last few years. So yeah. I don't have very much of my normal hair left. And I used to be that person with hair so thick, they needed to cut it in like 4 sections. And I don't mean like around the head, I mean the layers. I mean, they could not conceivably cut it on any sort of even length without having that many layers. This is nothing. This is thin. I used to have pigtails thicker than this single braid. I've lost over half of my hair. I would really not like to not lose any more. But just like help proving that what they said was shit. For my stepson, you know, what they said from my kids, proving it was shit for my stepson. It didn't fix what they did to me and my kids, and it didn't bring my kids home. It didn't make anybody listen to me about that. It didn't make anybody say, hey, you know what? We want to help. We want to bring them home. It didn't do that. So, you know what? Me saying this, it's not gonna make anybody say, hey, you know what? Maybe there's something to what you're saying. Maybe it is a bad thing to throw a bunch of pills at a bunch of little kids and raise people on a bunch of pills instead of learning how to deal with human emotion. Maybe it's a bad idea to fuck up a bunch of little kids for profit. It's not gonna make anybody say that. I have no faith left in the human race. It's a pile of shit. With very few exceptions. And those exceptions are actually more precious for being so. But in general, I have just no faith in the human race. Beyond the very stupid things that people just stand there and allow. They don't even do anything. They're just like, oh, well, if there was something wrong, such and such would stop it. No, it doesn't. Because you're not standing there holding it accountable and telling it that it has to. Because that's the only way that that even works. People are such shit. And it's not just the people that do the bad things, it's the people that stand there and say it's everybody else's job to do something about it. And then they just leave you standing there. And then they're like, oh, well, it worked out for other people, so what did you do? And you're like, well, I did this, this, and this. And then it kind of gets to the point where you just sort of go, you know what? Those other people had this, this, and this. And people around them weren't standing there gawking. Like, oh, everyone else will help you. Let the state help you. My own grandfather told me that if I needed help to just go to the state. My own what the fuck? The same man who would later tell me that the lawyer that I had should have been shot and, taken out back and shot. Because they didn't do their job. And I'm like, it would have been fantastic if you had realized, if you had cared about that while it was happening. Because the longer things go, the harder it is to find someone. And the more time just ticks away. I may never get to see my kids again. And no matter how much they tell me, oh, they'll find you one day when they're 18, they'll just age out, and everything was supposed to be magically okay, apparently. That's what they ignore, is that not everybody even finds their family. And some people are told such a load of crap they don't even look because they just assume that it's all true. It depends on the person, it depends on rather the luck of the draw. Gene has never found his family. We've made some attempts. Gene is 48 years old. He has not seen any of them since he was 6. 6. Chris's age. There was a book, and we have it on good authority that his adopted dad had something to do with its disappearance. He worked at the post office, and things were a bit fishy along that lines. There were some discrepancies, but no matter what he did, he couldn't get a hold of it. He couldn't get that back. His biological mom, his mom had made him a book. It had stuff on the back. And we found something a while back. Actually, his adopted mom pointed it out. There's a couple year discrepancy as far as age goes, but everything else matched up. Sorry, I had to blow my nose. That's not unusual, though. Carl was adopted 4 years different in age than he actually was. So whenever he was supposedly thrown out at 16, he was 12, which explained a lot of things to people who had known him since then, who saw that he kept on growing after he was supposedly 18, who knew that he acted way younger than he was supposed to be. They saw something wrong, and they were like, something's fishy here, but then, like, nobody knew anything, so what could they do? These what do you expect whenever you got late? You know what, if I ever write a book about this, you know what I'm gonna call it? What color are my eyes? Do you wanna know why? Because whenever you grow up in the system in any capacity, and you ask that question, you hear all sorts of things. Things you never thought that you would ever hear. I asked my grandfather, my own grandfather, what color are my eyes? Blue. He said, my eyes aren't blue. The only way he would say that is if he hasn't even looked into my eyes since I was an infant. I have hazel eyes. My eyes straight up change color on your eyes, and they are very rarely blue, and it is more of a gray whenever that happens, and not really a light shade either, so it's like one of those weird shades that you almost can't even tell is blue.